organization that provided support and help with foster kids, foster families, and that was their mission. They had several kids here that they took care for here and in Hilo. And when they decided to change their business model, they closed the two organizations here. So there were still children here to care for, and we didn't, Friends of Foster Kids, put together a proposed business plan that proposed that we would take it over along with the staff, which Keith was part of then, that would come to our, would be our organization, and we called it foster family programs then. Later along the way, we changed it to Family Programs Hawaii because it represented an expansion of other programs that we did. We started out as it was really just a collaboration between us and Casey, because Casey was still paying for their children that they had here. And they're really very generous because they pay for them in a foster family through high school, and they pay for college. Now, they've almost all aged out. We don't have many more that we are taking care of for Casey. So as we evolved, we picked up a number of other programs. In 2014, I guess, 2008, we put together a plan to build a safe place for kids to go. When a child is removed from their family, it's a very traumatic experience. And we built a home-like building out in Maile, and there's a place for them to go. We can take up to 15 beds. Often kids were separated from their siblings, and so this allowed the siblings and everybody to be brought there until our social workers could figure out where they would be placed, how they would be handled going forward. So as we've gone along, we've had different programs that all related to foster families and foster kids, and we've had a lot of government programs, a lot of state programs, and programs that we raise money for ourselves. That's beginning to become problematic for us, and we're looking at expanding into a for-profit operation or venture that will be for strengthening families. We now have a government contract to do that, but and we use Chaminade's psychology majors, and they come and work with us. And so it's doing quite well. We're helping families to get along better. The idea is to prevent them from having to be removed from their parents and put in foster care. So that's kind of a very brief overview of our organization. We've been around, as I said, about 15 years. As far as myself, I don't have a job. I work for him now as a volunteer. And so it's been very meaningful to me because I was in on the beginning of this, and I stayed with it. I was board chair for 6 years in the beginning. I took a couple year hiatus, and then came back again a couple of years ago to help these guys out if I can. So we have a board of approximately, I think we've got 14 members now. We're still trying to grow that board from the community, all of whom are pretty well dedicated to the programs and dedicated to trying to raise enough money to keep the programs going. But we think that having the social venture that we're embarking on, with the help of some of the people at Chaminade, we'll be able to put this thing together and have a for-profit organization, which hopefully can bleed some money over to the nonprofit side to help us with other programs. So, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jake. So one of the things, just expand what Jake is saying, is that a couple of years ago, we got a contract with Child Welfare. We've always most of our contracts are with Child Welfare, where we do psychological assessments for kids who are referred to Child Welfare. And so we do the assessments for the parents as well as the children. So we have about 30 different types of assessments. But in addition to just providing the assessment part, we're also a teaching or a learning facility. So one of the things that we do is we have practicum students as well as interns that are working on their dissertation. And so recently, as you probably know, Shimano took on the Hawaii School of Professional Psychology. And so as a result, right now we have 11 practicum students. They have 9 of them are what we call intervention. So, I mean, not intervention, but diagnostics. So they learn to do the assessment piece. And there are 2 of them that are in the intervention, which is more treatment part, as along with interns and postdocs. So we give them an opportunity to be exposed to the child welfare. Because one of the problems that we do know about mental health, and you guys are knowing a lot about the mental health, you see about the violence going on in our community as well as nationwide. And a lot of it has to do with lack of resources in terms of, especially in the area of mental health. And so part of what our agency is committed to doing is trying to develop that, the capacity for our community to be able to provide mental health services. Now, what we find is that even in rural areas, it's even tougher. And so for like our program, although we do evaluation statewide, all the psychologists we have on staff are Oahu-based because we have a hard time finding the resources on all the neighbor islands. And we do all the islands, including Lanai, Molokai, and all that. So it's sometimes very difficult to find psychologists that have the experience with psychology assessment tools, development, all these other kind of things. So it's easier for us to fly ours. So one of the things that we're looking at with this creating this social venture is looking at how we can use telehealth kind of a thing for several reasons. One is we can actually provide a service, and then in rural areas especially, and the other one is to provide training in which we can actually start working with therapists, and they can work directly with whatever person they have in that community, and to be able to then build capacity in all these other ones here. So that's something that we're looking at. So what I wanted to do is just kind of draw a picture on the board here of where we're trying to shoot for. Real quick, if you could do this here. So one color here. Good. So if you think about a stream and everything, you heard about these programs about how you want to get upstream if something is happening here downriver, the water flowing is going this way. What happens is we know that some kids are ending up in foster care, mainly for safety reasons. Something's happening in their home that the child can't be there, or their families are not able to care for them, neglect. Majority of them are neglect that come in there. About 60% are neglect, about 30% are physical abuse, and there's sexual abuse. There's different kinds of things that are going on. A lot of it is because of drugs, that there is some of that neglect. So there's 3 titans of this, and what we're looking at is this whole word about prevention. How do we now prevent this problem from occurring where kids are removed? And so there's a primary effort, and the state does this. So they get a referral, and what they do is to prevent this, they try to measure risk and see if the child can stay there, if we can provide services in which we do assessments, find out a lot more about the parents, if they're able to learn some things, if we give them some training, are they able to then help with the problem? If there's housing or whatever, is they try to put services so that they can prevent the child from being removed into this. So that's the primary part there, where already referrals made, something's happening, and they're trying to see if they can keep the child in the home. And these are primary intervention efforts to prevent this from happening here. And then I'm just going to jump into the tertiary. Tertiary types things are things that you might see. They do a lot of training. You see like about tobacco. They try to give you a lot of information about your health outcomes or what could happen. And by giving that, a lot of information, hopefully people don't start, on this part about smoking and some of the things. So they have what they call protective factors, in which they try to let parents know that these are things that are important for you to do if you are going to be, you want these children to develop, fully develop. How many of you guys are, even heard about the million word count, project that they have here on this island? Okay, so they have a project right here that they, put these devices that measure how many words are spoken, to children, these infants and toddlers. And they do it in this particular project, and they have it in different languages, so I think they have it right now in about 10 different languages. What they found is that, the families that spoke a lot to, their children, their ability to read and their educational part was a lot higher. And what they found that at age 3, the ones that were, the parents are speaking a lot, doesn't matter the language, they did that, versus the ones that they didn't, speak to their children, there was a 1 million count of words that they knew difference, just at that very young age. So you can see by educating folks to be able to read, to be able to spend time, talking and doing these, and what they can differentiate is what they hear in terms of TV. So turning on the TV doesn't count. This machine can actually tell if the person's talking versus if it's just coming out from the TV. And so those are those kinds of efforts in which they're trying to say, even before, kids get into this, let's see what we can do. However, this works, for some of our families. So there's that second part that we're looking at trying to do, and this is more of a secondary. SEC, boy. And basically what this is that perhaps they are having some problems. These are problems that may be having some problem experiencing, they're struggling here, but it's not to this level where there's a referral there. What we're hoping to do is try to build capacity in this area, and that's why we're looking at, creating this fee, program in which we can try to see if, we can do some impact by having some of our programs in this area, so that's prior. So one of the things that we wanna do is work with the preschools, identifying. So now, preschool says, hey, I've got some of these kids that have some problems, they seem to be struggling, they're maybe biting kids, or something's going on here. They would make a referral, we can have a psychologist come in, look in, make some recommendations, and then the family may decide at that point they wanna seek some treatment, therapy, or get some information, and that's where we see ourselves fitting in over here. One of the things that we do know, this is kind of research and everything else. Do you know what age most people are willing to get all kinds of services for their kids? Take a guess.
5.
Before age 5. So it's interesting, when you, a new parent of a newborn, up until about 4 or 5, you're motivated. If you find something's wrong, or you're sensing something, you're more likely to go get help. Once a kid gets into the public education part, somehow the thinking changes, and you kind of think the DOE should, Department of Education should fix this problem, or somebody else should be fixing. But up until this point, you'd be amazed that people are willing to pay for services for this part here. So if there's a problem identified in preschool, they're more likely to go out and get the help and figure out what the problem is, as opposed to age 12. And so that's why we're kind of like really wanting to push this part here, where we think that by building capacity in this area, not only here but also throughout the state, that this is going to be helping a lot by providing this thing here. One of the things that you'll see or may talk about, and I just wanted to give some terminologies, one of the interventions we're looking at is an evidence-based one. It's called parent-child interaction therapy. And what is very unique about this is that in this system right here, a lot of times these parents are sent to some kind of class, adult education class, parenting classes, and so they learn a lot of things. Now, it's going to be, what you learn is going to be based on 2 things. One is whether you have the cognitive ability to understand what you're just hearing and the messaging that you have. The second part is then being able to figure out, I learned this skill, now how do I apply it so that it makes sense for this particular kid. Okay. The application part is not always there. Sometimes it is, but most of the time you go into these classes and you absorb information, and then you have to figure out how you can apply it. There isn't a total application part here. And that's why it's good about the capstone part is you get to actually buy some of the things you guys have learned, by your instructors and everything else. So the wonderful part about PCIT is the child and the parent are next to each other, and they have to interact. What's different about this is that the parent will have an earpiece inside their ear, and there's a therapist in another room, and they can see what's going on. And what we do is they feed instruction to the parent about how to do things and how to say. So they already know what some of the problems are. And so what's great about this particular intervention is you don't necessarily need to understand some of the content or be able to read or anything, because you're getting this, and we try to use languaging that the parent might use. So we're not, if it uses pigeon or however, we can do some of those kind of things to be able to do that. And what's amazing is that you might have a toddler here who has always heard some of these negative kind of things, all of a sudden having a parent, because we're feeding some of this stuff like what they say, and they look up at their parent, they're like, because we videotape this thing for, to make sure we're doing it, the integrity of that, they'll look up and they'll start smiling like, whoa. And then, every time the child does something, the parent says something there, they give automatic feedback about that. And that is amazing, because one of the things that you probably know, if you've ever played on sports teams or anything else, is that getting feedback that is descriptive about, as opposed to general feedback, works a lot better. So if I was a coach and you were playing basketball and you had a game, and I just said, hey, good job. What do you think you did well in the game? You have no idea. But if I give you specific praise, like, what, I love the body, you were rebounding, that one instance that you did this reblock, you learn stuff. So what we do in our intervention is teach them to use a lot of specific praise as opposed to good job kind of a thing. And so really great stuff.
So Keith, is Family Programs currently active in all three?
We
of
are,
these?
FPH is currently involved in this part here, and we haven't really gotten to some of these other two areas. We do a little bit with, in community groups. So I am a member of the Hawaii Children's Trust Fund, which is, they try to look at doing prevention services statewide. And
So is 2, in terms of size, the opportunity, is 2 bigger than 1 and 3?
I think, it can definitely be a whole lot bigger. The who you can target, yes, definitely a lot bigger. This is messaging, and so depending on how you do your messaging, what format, whether you're using social media, TV, print, whatever, again, your group might be smaller, exposure to there, and this is by referral based, and so you already had something there. This is a whole lot broader that we can do.
And that's
Good
general
question.
public.
It's general public, right? Statewide general public.
So,
Okay, and I know Brett has something.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
thank you, that was a pretty awesome overview. I always learned something, so the river, I'm gonna have to incorporate that into my body of knowledge now. Actually, do you have like HDMI cable? Oh, one of these.
Choose your weapon. Just pull out
Wow.
the white thing. Pull out the white thing.
And then there's your HDMI.
There you go, perfect. Alright,
It's all attached.
so I don't have a good as memory as Keith, so I have things that are written down, so I can, or else I will forget, I don't need Wi-Fi, but. Let's see here, this will work. Let me give this out to you guys, so. So what I'm
Why am I
doing.
the only guy in this?
I didn't print out enough, yeah.
Oh.
So, one of the, before we even get started, one of the things I always like, you guys know who Simon Sinek is?
I do too.
Ah, he does. Yeah, so you want to tell us who Simon Sinek is? No.
No,
So Simon Sinek is like this big marketing guy, TED Talk, yeah, he's TED Talks and I'm a TED Talk junkie. So his whole thing is, kind of the start with why, right? So just to give you a little bit of background, I actually was introduced to the organization by Evan. And Evan's big thing was, he again, correct me if I'm wrong, he kind of got introduced to Cleo. His whole thing is he wants to help strengthen families, right? So
Right.
and I talk with Evan a lot about like alignment and things like that. So that's kind of his why. So just some background about myself. I'm adopted. I'm not and you know, looking back, maybe I could have used some of the family services. It wasn't having to do with my parents. It probably had to do with my mental health. So you know, that's a whole different story. But you know, now I'm well adjusted and I'm on no, I'm not on meds. But anyway, I shouldn't joke about that, right? So anyway, so one of the things I always want to figure out is kind of what's your guys' why, right? Obviously, I know that you guys are part of this capstone class, which is kind of capstone. That's the whole thing, right? Capstone on a building. It's kind of like the culmination. One thing that I was interested in is I thought I was going to be walking into like a room of like psychology students, but you guys are all business students, which is really interesting to me. And I think as we get into this, I think it'll be really of interest to you guys, but also of interest to us, kind of your background. So real quick, I mean, just kind of give me an idea, like why is it you started as Acai Bowl, you want to join your family's restaurant business. So what are some of the whys, like in a quick sentence? Why do you do what you do? Not necessarily this class, but like what is your why? What gets you going? So start with Sephora?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, just to find the right job that fits me in the future, that will bring me
Oh, there you go.
enough money to provide for myself and
So-
others.
So like money, right? So money is your
Yes.
why?
I think so, yeah.
That's a great why. Money pays bills.
I would say money is probably mine too.
Okay.
I'd say the independence and the time that you can gain by just working hard on your own business, it pays off in the long run. I kind of want to control my own time. I don't really want to answer to too many people or have my job on the line and stuff like that. So I kind of want to be focusing on that.
Got it.
For me, it's kind of carrying on my family's like core values and like helping out with the community and everything. So it's pretty much giving back to my family wants to do.
Right. So a couple of different things, right? Economic drivers, I mean, obviously. But I think it's interesting because as you get older, as you evolve, or, depending on your background, economic, I think, is like a pretty broad why. And again, I encourage you guys to really kind of search that, right? Why do I do what I do? Because it's, economics is, and this will tie into what family code is saying, but economics is always tied into some other types of why, right? It ties into some of the other things, independence, security, right? I want to make sure I have money, so I don't need to worry about this and that. I don't know if anybody has kids. I got kids. I'm worried about, man, I gotta pay tuition. How am I gonna get this money to go pay my tuition? And so there's all different types of why. And again, depending on our background. I mean, we're blessed to be born in the United States. I heard a quote that basically the outcome of your life is almost entirely based on geography, and you essentially won the lottery, right, of the world geography. Watch this interesting show. It's about kind of Middle Eastern terrorism, and one guy said, like, you look at me as the bad guy. If I was born in Cincinnati, would I be the bad guy then, right? And I don't know, and it's a deep philosophical question. So I think that really gets to the heart of what Keith was talking about, right? And this whole idea about prevention. The state is huge on there. Right? They have this program called Ohana Nui. Everything is focused on preventative medicine. You hear it in general health medicine, Thrive from Kaiser, HMSA. I mean, they'll pay you basically a bunch of money to get these checkups so that they know. And again, it costs them $100 to pay you to go see your doctor, but it costs less in the long run to treat you on kind of the basis. And that's really what we want to focus on, and really what we want to develop this enterprise over. Just some stats. So I learned a bunch of stuff, right? So from DHS, how many percentage of kids in Hawaii do you think are served by Department of Human Services? You're not getting car chart, plus or minus 25%.
Plus 25%.
Okay, plus? Plus? General consensus plus? Okay, if you have to throw out a number, what would it be?
I would have said 32.
32?
Maybe like
40? 42%. So 40, that was a big number to me. I'm like, 42% of all the children in this state are served by the Department of Human Services one way or another. That to me was a shock. I was like, wow, that's almost half. I honestly thought, even at 25%, I thought it was way lower. Again, my background, right? I went to private school, grew up in a nice family. I'm like, everything's, super cheery around here, right? And that was an eye-opener. Of adults, 25% of the entire adult population is served by the Department of Human Services. So 50% of kids, quarter of the adults are all served by the Department of Human Services. Again, the whole focus of the state, where their funding is going, where their motivation is going, is all going to preventative medicine. Same thing. So that's what kind of the idea that we wanted to build with this social enterprise. So And sorry, I think it's on the wrong input, but it's alright, that's not my screen. Can we get?
Oh, keep pushing buttons
Yeah.
until it comes out.
So I'm going to this piece of paper, and yeah, I don't really need to look at it. So
Is that presentation for you or for them?
it's for them, but
Just sit over there.
Yeah, you got the piece of paper, so.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, there you go.
well, actually, here's really what I wanted to show,
There you go, boy.
and this expounds, complements what. Wow, can't read that at all. But anyway, this essentially is a mind map of what Keith was saying, right?
Okay.
So you got
it's a
this
lot of
family services, and
stuff.
here's what we're gonna look at, right? So we'll just kind of shrink it all.
That thing's nuts.
So I mean, and in general, yeah, you really don't need all of that. Here's the stuff that we do need. So you got family programs here in the middle. You got its people, they're talking about the board. You got its programs, all the things, in that kind of that primary market. And you got its history and you got its resources. So part of this is government. I think that's what we're talking about, right? Is that anytime you're looking at an opportunity, and I look at this as it's a business opportunity for family programs. So just some background, I think that's one of the things. Is they're looking at a different segment and a different market to essentially help fund the activities that they're doing. It's to diversify their revenue sources. You guys, I mean, as business guys, probably can give me a whole dissertation on what that actually means. But that's the whole idea, right? Is that as a nonprofit, you're somewhat limited and you're dependent upon a whole bunch of people, with its government grants, private grants, corporate sponsorships. You're dependent on a whole lot of people. So the whole idea is that how can we serve a different segment of our population and diversify our revenue sources at the same time? So that's where we're getting to this next sheet where it's talking about what are we actually looking at doing. So this goes to the question of maybe not necessarily why we're doing what we're doing, but also what we need. And again, this is very broad. We're in the early stages, and I'm going to want a lot of feedback from you guys. But this is kind of what we're looking at, right? So for this family program, social enterprise, again, it's hitting a secondary market based upon a lot of the tools that we have. So PCIT, parent-child interactive therapy, is what Keith was talking about, where you're essentially, again, there's a ton of application for it, but it's basically you got two people that are in a room, a parent and a child, and somebody else is essentially coaching them through the therapy itself, and it's immediate feedback, it's valuable, and so we got to figure out, okay, what do we do with this, right? That's kind of the product that we have to offer, and that's where, kind of when I go through the thought process of when we're looking at social enterprises, this is kind of what I will start with, right? So again, start with the why. What problems do we have to solve? And I think that's going to be a great starting point to get some brainstorming, and really, from you guys, I mean, from a very outside perspective, I mean, that's what we want to hear, some of these questions, like who's our target customers? What do you think the top 3 programs are for this segment? And, coming up with an actual problem statement. I asked, actually, we talked about this with the board, we asked them to come up with a problem statement with family programs. Like, what do you think is the one problem? What, like Evan also says, like, what keeps you up at night? What keeps the board up at night? A lot of that was built around finance security. Exactly like you said, our why is, hey, we gotta have the security, we gotta have the finance. So same thing, we're going after this business enterprise to focus on those things. So I think that'd be a great starting point for you guys as a group to kind of start to think about, okay, like, and again, what's gonna come of that is questions. What questions do you have for these guys? Like, what are you guys doing? What do you guys actually do? What are these segments? Keith mentioned preschoolers, like, okay, why do you guys say preschoolers, right? And that's kind of how this is going. For our target customer or target segment is the preschoolers. What are the top 3 problems that they have for this segment, right? And again, it might be such a small population of preschoolers that actually have an issue. You might say, okay, is that worth pursuing? Is it, we got to expand resources, people, money, whatever it might be, time, and we got to go after this segment. Is there another segment? And there's a ton. We were just brainstorming the other week and talking about, is it military? Is that an avenue? We talked about your for-private industry. What if you went above 5 years old? What if you went to just middle schoolers? Is there a certain segment of that population? What if it's college students that are away from home and, there's a huge mental health crisis, as I understand, I don't know the stats, but in kind of college campuses, right? Is that an opportunity? But again, that's what we want to explore in this whole starting with the why. It's like, why are we doing, or maybe, and it expands and builds upon the now the who, right? So what customer segments are identified? Once we start to figure out what customer segment, what we want to do is kind of, again, this is where we need your help. Get all these segments, get all these questions asked, and really come up with, okay, who are some of these segments that we're gonna chase? Once we get those segments identified, kind of prioritize them based on metrics. So, by the way, you wanna be a small business owner, this is what you gotta deal with, like, are you tracking your time, are you, so. Yeah, time tracker's a great one. I'm not tracking, by the way, that's what you told me. But anyway, so what we wanna do is prioritize, based on metrics, again, redefining, again, this is where it's gonna be important, where we start to gather some data, right? What is the size of this metric? What is exactly like you would do in a business case study. What's the size of this segment? How many preschoolers are there? How many preschoolers actually would use these services? Are these problems that they actually face? And in the military, what is that, what are those same questions? How much capital do these people have? I mean, do they have the resources to solve this problem themselves? Do they need to have capital brought in? Can you be essentially a fiduciary, like a vessel to bring capital to these people? They need more capital than they need help. What is the ease of access? This is a great, and we'll talk a little bit more about the telemed. Telemed is a completely different, or I shouldn't say completely different, but it's a segment that is, I think, melds really well with this PCIT because again, you don't necessarily need to physically be in that room. So ease of access, how capable are these people of getting the access or the help that they need, right? A college student, I mean, they may be physically there, but maybe it's an emotional ease of access. How do I get to these people?
According to Wikipedia, These People is the fourth studio album from British singer and musician Richard Ashcroft.
They're always listening.
Released on the 20th
Is that your phone?
2016.
It's my phone, that's creepy. So,
Is that your ringer?
no, it's I think it's like Bixby or
Wow,
Google.
what is that?
Google
That's
picked,
your alarm.
no, Google I think picked up on
Yeah,
something I said.
question, yeah.
Yeah, so ease of
Hey,
access.
Melanie.
How much access do these people, what access do these people have, whether it's a geographic? You're looking at telemed, I mean, all the way down the road, when we're helping you guys build a business case, that's another thing we're gonna start to look at, right? Like as far as healthcare reimbursement, there's all these rules you gotta follow to actually get reimbursed by healthcare, which, again, going to the financial security, if we don't get reimbursed or there's no way to generate any revenue, there's no sense in doing it, so, you're just gonna be dead in the water. Compatibility, how much do we wanna work with this segment, right? I mean, I'm sure the prison population could use this, do we wanna go out there and pursue, again, it might be something that they have a need for, but is it something that we wanna devote our resources to? And, not to be prejudiced against prisoners, but again, I'd probably much rather work with preschoolers than I would prisoners, again, so, and you can think of it as a matrix, right? You have maybe 5 or 6 different segments here, you're gauging each one of these on a different category, and essentially summing them all up. And some of these, 1 through 3, 1 through 5, whatever metric you use, as long as you're using the same. And then the evidence of a problem, okay, is there an actual evidence of a problem? Preschoolers are like, oh yeah, there's a huge need, maybe that's a 2. Military, yeah, there's absolutely a need, we need this, now we need this, yesterday they're high 3. Versus, college students, I don't know, we got counselors on campus, okay, maybe there's a 1. So essentially what we're doing is redefining that segment with measurable things, and it's not so much, absolute data, but it's more what is our capacity, or what is our market demand, so to speak. And then taking segment validation and going back to these people and finding people that we can talk to validate our assumptions, right? I mean, a lot of this is kind of assumption making up here, right? We're talking to some people, we're asking good questions, but taking that data out and talking to people, our existing networks, right? I mean, you guys have a huge network of professionals, subject matter experts that are in the psychology field, that are in the mental health field, that are serving these populations. I go talk to my preschool, my daughter's in preschool, I'll go talk to them, I'll talk to all of these people. Essentially what you want to do is take these assumptions that you've made and this data that you've gathered and really go to the people and say, hey, here's what we've kind of found. We want to test it against you. Does this make sense? Are we on the same line? And then also community partners. Community partners are going to be huge because, again, these are the people that are going to, when you actually get out there, you need to have buy-in from them. They need to believe in your why, right? They need to pick up on what you're talking about. And then, just, again, some of the questions here, reflecting on that initial problem hypothesis we made. Are these one of their 3 biggest problems that they deal with on a regular basis? What are the current solutions that are out there? Are we addressing a need that is somebody else already addressing this need? And if they are there desired changes that you have to the status quo? Is there something that, they're doing it in a way right now, but it could be done so much better this way? that's what we want to get. You don't want to necessarily reinvent it. It's like acai bowl, right? A lot of people make acai bowls, but there's something special about your acai bowl. Price, quality, something about it is you're doing it better. But it's not like you're like, hey, we're doing these, I don't know, whatever, banana leaf bowls. It's actual banana leaf. We've ground them. Like, who makes banana leaf bowls? Like, go with something you already know, make it better, and move on from there. And then taking some analysis, right? Taking all this data that we've gathered, this feedback we've gathered, and doing some analysis. And then also, this is more on an overall, but proper advisory. So I think it's the most important thing to get a lot of perspectives from a lot of different avenues. Cleo has some background in the tech and startup. Evan has some a lot of business background in Navy, military, mental health. You want to get all these perspectives because everyone looks at it a different way. You guys as a business student looks at it differently than a pure psychiatry student versus a sociologist versus a zoologist. I don't know. But what you want to do is you want to take all those perspectives because everything is going to lend itself to the greater picture. And then, so varied experience, subject matter experts, and then also you got to get networked, making sure that we have people that can reach out. So, the long and short of it, it's kind of we kind of information dumped on you guys, but I think that's the main thing is just, again, I think that's what I was looking for when we were talking, trying to figure out, okay, well, like, what can we actually, like, that's what you guys want to know, right? I mean, in the back of your mind, you got to think, okay, this is all great and all, but what do you guys need from us? And I think that's the first step. Right, just kind of figuring out and really classifying the problem. Like, what is the problem? This is going to be huge because what we can do is we can go to the board, we can go to our stakeholders, and say, like, okay, here's some evidence based upon data that we've collected and feedback that we've gotten. This is, here's the the 5 segments that we looked at. We identified these 2 as the highest need based on this data. We went out, we talked to these. Much more important than say, hey, I was at my computer and I Googled how to do PCIT and this is what I found is that we should chase preschoolers and preschoolers may very be the one. I don't mean to pick on preschoolers, but again, what we want to do is we want to get the data, we want to support the why of what we're doing, and I think that's where we could use a lot of your help. So,
Professor, do we have a hard stop at 12:30?
No, you have a hard stop when you lose your audience.
Okay.
boom, that might be close. Perfect. Done. Questions?
Not at all.
Yeah.
So you know that you guys are going to be split up really between the 2 groups. I think we're going to run 2 groups because there are 10 of you now, and I know one of these cameras is looking at you guys during this entire process, and I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to see fear and concern and anxiety constantly in your faces. And then
Wait, so these are 2 different groups?
there will be 2. There are 10 people all together in the
Okay.
class. 6 of them are holy rollers, so they're at NASTO and having a free lunch afterwards.
Okay.
And then they're
Sounds
getting
nice.
their credit for their scholarships
Mhm.
that are connected with some kind of religious activity.
How many per team? It's gonna be
5 and 5. I think
Oh,
and
just 5.
will
Oh, okay,
work.
okay, okay.
First, I was thinking about doing like 3, 3, and 4, but then I think this is getting to be something where they need a few more bodies.
So like if these guys wanted to just do it, then they can't be one team?
No, I think because of the way that we are starting and that we have, we got 14 more weeks to go. And then there are 6 other people who will maybe benefit, maybe not benefit at all from the recording that I just made.
The one on the wall?
That I'm going to put on the one on the wall. It started with
I love
that,
the wall.
and then it went that way, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
hopefully it picked up.
Okay.
So I should,
Wow, that's
As it's still running, that's the nice thing about this, it's got kind of like unlimited, so I can take pictures of the wall for long periods of time. But,
That's awesome.
but there's 6 more people, and I think it would be best to integrate them into, with these guys that have heard this whole thing firsthand. The rest of them will have, at best, seen the video. I'll be honest, we're not really at that point where we can pick all these things up like that. I mean, this is a class that for the first time, right, and you're realizing this, that you're being asked to do things with no textbook, no guidance, no structured homework, no structured lectures, and you gotta go out there, pull everything together by yourself, right? Whatever you learn about doing marketing studies, about focus groups, about doing research, about management, about law, about taxes, all those kind of things, you have to figure out how they will play into this. And for the most part, I'm not supposed to be that engaged with it.
What about us?
You guys can be as engaged
Yes,
as
you're not
you
on your
want.
own.
Yeah. The best project we've ever had was for a business and marketing plan for Ilani Palace. And it was also the subject of a competition for the Hawaii Public Relations Society. And they provided for our students mentors from the advertising community outside. And yeah, the students responded very well with the mentors because they're tired of me, right? So they actually won first, second, and third. And it was just a class project that they had 4 weeks to do. And they kicked UH's ass. And, yeah, it was always something. And you know, and nobody expected it, but then even the marketing people here said the students did better work than they've seen in the profession, actually, you know, in people charging so much. So. I do have one question
Yeah.
on the comfort level of the board as far as this idea that this is a for-profit subsidiary. It can run its own direction, right? So first big question. Are the groups going to be released from the general mission statement of the organization in developing their plans? Can they just go profit out? And, you know, even though it might have been, as it was suggested, for kids to start out with, maybe they go for college students. And it's just about who can pay, right? Maybe it's, you know, something else along those lines. Or maybe what they do is they look for things that could be done in the area now where insurance reimbursement would cover the kids. So these won't be low income, high risk kids that are subject to DHS, CPS interaction. These are the kids that the parents are just worried from when they were born, do they get into Central Union Church preschool, which will then lead them to Punahou for K-12, which will then lead them to, you know, Ivy League schools and possibly presidency of the United States. That's a totally different market. It has nothing to do with the needs base that's out there. You know, so you know, can they
But they
be?
still might fall under the need.
Well, there's a need, but not
And the mission, I think.
as far as the mission is concerned. I think
What
your
is the
mission
mission?
is really looking more towards helping those who are at risk, right? And that's been also the typical customer that you've had. So this is really looking more at those who are well heeled and would never have been in the groups that you would have seen in any situation up until now. Is that allowable? Or will the board freak out and say no? Because this is my test question to them, is if they truly want a for-profit, they have to be willing to give up the mission. Because a for-profit functions totally different than a non-profit. And you try to link the two, and then you get board members that are gonna start to micromanage and cross the line. And they will destroy anything that could be done. I mean, maybe not destroy, that's too strong a word, but they could greatly impede anything that could come about.
I mean, I would say that's part of your challenge, right? Is to, again, it's to build a business model that it's and I think that's where the real world scenario comes in, right? It's not as clean as said like, well, it can be this and that. There's always going to be a gray area, and I think this is Professor Tana, this is a perfect example of a gray area, right? I mean, your genesis is based upon, again, technology or methodology, this PCIT that, again, I mean, who knows? This whole thing could end up totally unrelated. I don't think it will, but I think, I don't think you have enough time to get that unrelated, but it could be further than where it is today, further away from where it is today. But I think that's the question, right? It's, and I think that goes into what a capstone really does. It's not, okay, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, here's step 4. Okay, do step 1, you guys have done that already. You guys are seniors, you guys are business guys, you guys are ready to do, seriously, okay, like here's what we need to do. I don't know how to figure it out, because that's why we need you guys, and I need your guys' input. I don't want you guys to just say, well, I want to do step 1, I want to do step 2. I need you guys to say like, okay, if I could do this my way, what would it be? And then, again, we're gonna have some input, we're gonna have some guidance. But going back to your question about the board, that's gonna be my pitch to the board, just to say, hey, look, here's the deal. We don't know where it's gonna get up, but what we do know is we need to take steps 1, 2, 3 to get to that point. Now, the whole idea is it will be in line somewhat with the mission of what
Gotta be
family.
somewhat there.
Yeah, it's got, and again, it's not like you're gonna say like, oh yeah, we're gonna go, well, I'll give you an example, a video game, right? I mean, there's some, out of UCLA, they did this family program where they basically developed an app, which is for foster kids, right? Whether it's student providers, foster kid providers, and it's literally a video game, right? Would you say that today, if we said, yeah, we're gonna go build a video game for foster kids, and we're gonna, sell it as a subscription model, so on and so forth, or we're gonna sell it to a healthcare agency, that might not go over too well today, until you go through the process of, oh, you know what, we've done the research, and that's the whole point, right, is that part of building that business case is to support something that's close or in line with the mission, or that you can sell to the mission. You gotta make that business case for the board. So long and short, that's a long answer, I should say, to a short question, which is, I think the intent is to stay near in line with the mission, but I would not limit it to say that, oh, it has to be based on the mission. I think you guys are very clear on what family programs is, even without having our mission statement. Right, half the time mission statements are, it's kind of.
I would say, having worked with the agency, and Keith and Jake can speak directly for the agency, but as an outsider looking in, whatever we come up with has to be centered around family strengthening.
Yeah.
You got
it.
But I don't think there's any constraints on how we get there, as long as it's a focus on family strengthening. It incorporates education in there, training and education. It incorporates the prevention that family programs has been directly involved in, because this is going to center around mental health.
Yeah.
And and then the third thing is, and Keith mentioned all of these in his presentation, is building capacity for Hawaii. In the research that I've done, right now, the state of Hawaii is meeting 17% of the mental health need across the state. 17%. So looking at broadly, there's nothing like this. There's pieces of this, but there's nothing like what we have, the concept that we have in our mind. And if we're successful, we would want the organizations to replicate this over time. So it's prevention, it's family strengthening, it's prevention, it's building capacity in mental health. That's my take on it.
You gotta stay in the range. I got a question. So on this project, then, are some of these people, some of the students already like on it, or is this a pitch and they gotta decide?
No, they're all on it. They're all.
Oh, you're already in, kind.
Yeah, they're all in.
Okay.
This will
So
be
we call it captive audience.
This is the major thing that they have to do by the 15th week, which is 14 weeks from now. There is
So we'll have 5. There will be 5 for this, and the 5 will be doing something else,
No,
or everybody.
both will be doing, and they'll give you perhaps the same thing because they cheat and talk to each other, or they'll give you 2 different ideas, which might be great because then it gives you a different path that could possibly occur. So they're both groups of 5 will present in the first week of December, which we hope you come back for, or you have to watch The Wall.
Because like it though.
And then what will happen is that they will present their final project in an oral form and also have a written plan to accompany that.
Okay.
And you will have the opportunity to ask them questions until the hard stop occurs, which is when they run out of the room with their hair on fire and don't want to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
Can we hear from them a little
Sure.
bit? You think?
If
What you
get
guys'
them to
thoughts are?
talk.
Yeah, I mean, been one way so far.
Is this a graduate or no graduate project?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Well, why don't we-
That's what I want to know.
Oh, you know what I wanna ask? I wanna ask from you folks, what do you wanna get out of this project? Since you kinda have to do, I thought we were pitching and you that, but since you kinda have to do it, what do you want out of this?
Any real life experience that's out of the school standard is obviously very valuable to us. So anything that we can think outside of the box that doesn't come straight from the textbook is fantastic. So I think this is a good learning opportunity for all of us.
Okay.
Why I can't think of our mission statement. What's our mission statement?
Providing high quality care, and
Like, what do you have, what's gonna be the determining factor whether this is worth your time or not? Like, how do you judge that? At the end of this thing's all done, how do you determine, oh, that was well spent, that was time well spent?
Can you find something that's actually helpful for you guys? So like new ideas maybe, new perspectives. I remember that will be found on their part. I feel like it would feel like it was.
Like you make an impact.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Are you're from here and you live here?
No, I'm from Belgium originally.
Oh, are you gonna, but you are, was that you this went to North Dakota?
Excuse me?
No.
oh, that was the
The
other
other
one.
job. But you're gonna stay here, or maybe.
Not sure yet, but maybe.
If you can work it out.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your guys' current mission statement? Per se right now?
Okay, we're trying to figure that out. Here, I got a piece of paper with it. So find it.
Yeah, it's on the bottom, well, the mission
Oh.
is just really
Well, no
dedicated.
wonder it's so small.
Yeah,
Please
Okay. yeah, so we're basically on the bottom of in the white area, it's, we're dedicated to strengthening families, children and families with high quality prevention, support and transition services. And above is what we have in terms of prevention, support and transition.
So what would be
And
the
the
issue
long-term
with not
vision is
staying
we help
on
kids.
this
Yeah.
mission? I mean, this mission is pretty wide,
Yeah.
you know, what I mean, it doesn't say only for people,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I think, yeah, I mean, and many missions don't specify.
Yeah, it's
something
super
like-
vague so you can accomplish it.
But what it is that the boards have taken that as the position that they're supposed to follow.
Mhm.
It becomes a de facto mission statement. That's what I concern myself with a lot. You know, it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to do it. It's a third thing to live it, right? So
Mhm.
Just, if I may, I've been trying to develop this idea with the board, and we try to talk about it every board meeting, every month. We have a retreat, a board retreat next month, and I'm hoping to really get a consensus of everybody on what we're doing. I still think there are some with less and some with more, as in any group, you're not gonna get everybody thinking the same way. And so that would be one of my goals coming out of our retreat. I sense that most of the members do want to do this, but they don't know how to do it. And that's a little bit of frustration because, you know, they're kind of hands-on people who wanna get it done, make it happen now. Well, it's a lot of work, as we've been through it, everybody here, everybody's got great ideas, and, I'm not a behavioral science, I'm an MBA too, but I look at it as a business thing where, you know, who's the market? How are we gonna get paid? How are we gonna deliver? And so on and so on, all the good things that a business plan should include. And so that's my look, or my take on it right now. I think generally though people are for it. They don't want the agency to fail. And, you know, frankly, we're on thin financial place right now.
How much access are these students gonna have to the board and whoever they need to get questions answered and so on?
Well, they got me any day they want me. But that's probably not who they want. I mean, I can,
What about
I
the
can
rest of them so they
interpret
know
the
they're
board.
What
I
they
think
do?
we can get people together with them.
I think this board will
I
make
think they'll
themselves
meet
available.
with them. What are you thinking about? Everybody else works for me, and so it's a
I mean, maybe
matter of-
even if you're doing the board retreat in 1 month, right?
Yes.
When do you guys start? When did they
This
start?
project?
Today?
They started yesterday.
Okay, so if they're starting, then maybe they can do some, we can get some preliminary piece so that the board and people can meet and, you know, they know who they're dealing with and they know, I mean, that's a lot of the benefit for
Yeah.
students
And,
is
and in terms
interaction
of,
and
in terms
networking.
of, in terms of data and everything, like analysts, stuff that you guys have already obtained, are we gonna have access to that as well through?
Absolutely.
They should have
Yeah.
access.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've set it all up in, a Dropbox,
Dropbox.
and we can add you to the Dropbox with, you know, within minutes. And just so you know the structure, Keith is the CEO of Family Programs Hawaii, and Jake is chair of the board. Brett is taking on the project ownership. I'm a mentor to the group, and I believe you're going to be whenever available.
I'm like, comes in when something is needed.
But in addition to that, one of the things that
If
Brett and I
something's needed,
have talked about
Then
is adding some additional mentors, advisors to the group as well. So it would be, we'd look at what expertise we need. Within the three of us, probably the five of us, we have a big network. Both on the for-profit and the nonprofit side. So we'll draw on that because this
well, we're 2
project-
degrees away from every single person
Yeah.
that you would need to talk to.
Yeah.
Within 2 degrees, if not 1. I know that for a fact. So I think that it would be beneficial for them too, because this is a two-sided deal,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah.
gotta get something out of this, we gotta get
Mhm.
something out of this. If there's possibilities, my own opinion, so, that at the board retreat, somehow they can be integrated in, so they can have a good idea of what the
Exactly.
issues are, as well as what the heck is going on, and then they can also meet face to face, so they know who, you know, they can make a mental map and so on. You can get a relationship going here, you know what I'm saying? Because if you have just separate here, that becomes very hard,
Yeah.
especially on their side. And then once we know exactly what needs to be done, let's say they need to talk to X organizations or so on, or what, why, and so, that's where we can add in extra value. So you need to talk to, say, Executive Director of Good Beginnings Alliance, because that's, or whatever they are called now, that's my personal friend, I take care, you know what I mean? So, this is a team effort, I think they'll get the most out of it that way, and we'll get a much better product in this, plus you might get some additional, volunteers after, but they gotta be integrated, it's not, it's
Mhm.
lame otherwise.
I'm
Maybe,
trying to think how to do that.
maybe
because
the
we've got
way you bring
pretty
them into the
full schedule.
retreat is when Brett comes in
Yep.
to do his presentation on
Yep.
the project.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you're
Mhm.
gonna give an invitation to him to come in, that's when they join.
Well, you're assuming because I don't think we've done that yet.
Well, he just accepted
It
yours.
just kind of occurred to me that as we were talking, just exactly what you're saying, it'd be a great idea for some or all of these, young folks to come in and
Yeah.
give us
It
a-
has to be, because these are volunteers, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And one other thing,
Get them
and
volunteers.
maybe this is for you, Professor Donna, I mean, and I think it's, cause we're kind of bordering, like, this is almost like an MBA, like final thesis,
Pretty much.
you know, business plan competition, I mean, it's a whole bunch of different things, so I think that's one of the things that we can do is, and I wanna follow up, and to Evan's point, I think that's exactly my role, right? My role is kinda just to organize things, but what I wanna push you guys to do is, and you're talking about like real life experience, I mean, this is all part of it, and I don't want you to ever be bashful, because that's what, we're not, he's your judge, right? We're not your judge, we're here to be like absolute partners, and think of it as like, essentially like, hey, you guys wanna start a business, let's go start a business. That's essentially what we're coming to you to say. Here's kind of the basis, you guys give us ideas, and I think that's gonna be where you guys get a lot out of it, right? And like, I think you guys already have good questions, like for example, the board. Don't worry about, oh, can we go, hey, you know what would be awesome, can we get access to the board? You know, here's what, and you know, and then we can play this, like perfect, schedule, board meeting, board retreat, when's that? Okay, what do you guys wanna have done? And then that's where I kinda help you guys come in and almost be like a structurer, right? I mean, that's what I do project management, right? So it's almost saying, okay, well, what do you guys wanna have done by, you know, whatever, it's in 6 weeks, right? Or what is it, 4 weeks?
It's September 14th.
Perfect, 2 weeks. So what do you guys wanna have done in 2 weeks? Okay, what can we get done in 2 weeks? How much time do you guys have to allocate to this? Right, you guys got other stuff going on, right? And this is not your full-time job, right? You know, if you were to charge us for it, how much would you guys want to charge us? If you had to bill us, what would you guys be, right? And again, that's where the real fun of it comes in, and that's what I want you guys to do, is really take ownership, and again, that's why I don't want to say don't pay attention to the mission, whatever, but don't let the mission kind of guide, almost crunch you. Like, let it go, get your idea out there, and then once the idea's out there, how does that idea tie into the mission? But don't think, okay, well, what's the mission? Okay, well, from there, what can we do? Think of it, like, flip it around, do it the opposite way, right? Okay, well, what can I do? Brainstorm, throw it all against the wall. Okay, well, from those 50 ideas I just came with, what do I like? How would this work? How does that tie into the mission? Okay, these three kind of nuts.
Right, I think we gotta, you guys only have a few weeks to do this, right? It's like a month or 2 months.
No, we
14
have-
weeks.
you have 14
Oh, 14
To be honest,
That's still not that long,
Yeah, it's
you know what I
not.
mean? So there's gotta be parameters put here. These guys got a lot. You guys are undergrad or graduate? Huh? Yeah, so there's gotta be parameters put around it for them to work within, to be
Right.
creative. You know what I mean? They kinda
Right,
just
we
look
got
at
the
Could be
parameters.
super
This
hard.
is these are our parameters right here. Like I
Yeah.
said, this first page. I mean, that's
Open
basically.
communication is good. You gotta get parameters.
Yeah.
So that's basically what we're doing. I think that's what we start with, right? Segment exploration. And again, that's what I think, again, 5-6 segments, following these couple steps. Again, it's not, and that's the thing too, right? Don't overcomplicate it. But again, to get to these things, I wanna hear your questions, and I think that's where, don't be bashful, and what I will do is I'll schedule something up with you where I can kinda sync it up with your actual class schedule. And we'll get some of the, the actual assumptions and the project parameters like you're talking about. We'll get that all together, so.
What's the goal of you guys, retreat? What's your objective?
Oh,
What are you trying to do? Or are you just getting together to talk stuff?
We have some things that we're gonna do with it, I forget.
What's the objectives?
But basically,
what's
we
the
wanna
company?
talk about the organization.
Okay.
So this fits. This would be a different driver than what we were thinking about, because we were using our financials and some things like that to drive our.
So you're gonna talk about, this is where we have a problem, is what you're gonna say, right?
Right, and then we're looking at action plan.
We got a
Something-
problem, looks
how we-
crappy, we got a problem, this is financials, we got a problem, and then when everyone's like, well, what are we gonna do about it, then these guys come in?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe
I think
they
we can fit
can
it
kind
in
of
very
prep
well.
up a little bit prior, so that the
Mhm.
presentation makes sense and addresses exactly kind of what you guys are going after, and then there should be some type of ability for them to interact,
Mhm.
because they need to know what
Oh, well,
personalities
I'd
they're
like
dealing
that
with,
to happen.
Yeah.
they need to know what the issues are,
Yeah.
like not secret kind of issues where it pops out later, like, oh, you didn't tell me that, you know what I mean? For them to do a good job, it has, I think, you gotta have that kind of open communication, for them to get something out of it,
Mhm.
the same exact thing.
Okay, let me see what I can do.
So
What do
one,
you think in the way of time? Couple hours, I mean, we have about, where are we, 9 to 1 or 9 to 9 to 2?
Can you do it
An hour.
prior to lunch, and then, are you gonna eat lunch or no?
Yeah.
And you're
Working
doing,
lunch, yeah.
what kind of working lunch, where you guys got
No, it's in home.
cause then could you do it where you go the hour before so on, or whatever the timepiece to
Yeah.
do the pitch, and
Yeah.
then you split them in between board members, let them chat
Uh-huh.
during lunch, you know what I mean?
Would they be 2 groups at the same time, or one group?
Just separate them out,
Separate
let them,
okay.
let them kind of divide and conquer,
Okay.
so that you have direct access, board access, at least one board with one of these at the same time,
Yeah,
so people can,
and
and
then
then
we'd
can,
have lunch and people could talk to them.
and then kind of hui back up, and then if need be, even during that lunch, if they need to switch out, like, okay, you should talk to so-and-so, then
Uh-huh.
physically actually move them.
The wife of the president of MidPac is hosting this in her, she's on our board, and she's hosting this in her home. You know where that is?
Presidential
Yeah,
in
yeah.
front, yeah.
Perfect.
She's kind of a fundraiser though, too, is she
Yeah.
raising money for you?
Uh,
Working with us.
That's kind of her deal,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure thing.
I used all 4 years already.
Okay.
She's-
So I don't know if I'm turning you off, but it's just that I'm looking at
well,
in
this
between
is
both.
adding 10 more people to our home, and she's hosting the lunch. So I gotta talk to her about this first.
So when you talk to her, just, if you tell her, look, this is our student group, they're working for free, they need to understand the ins and outs, and this is a great opportunity for us to engage. They're busy, you guys are busy, can we do it? And if not, if they need to do lunch elsewhere, then move it.
Okay, yeah, we could probably do something else somewhere else.
You could also do it at Side Street Inn probably, if later on, you know what I mean, for a follow-up piece, kind of an interim piece or whatever, because she owns it, so.
so,
How long has the program been in existence?
2004.
The program's been exists
So
2000.
15 years.
So the primary issue right now is that the company, I mean, the program is dramatically needed, obviously because there's way more demand than there is supply. Funds are being cut, and they're under serious financial constraints, meaning that if they don't get it together, they die, and then it becomes less being able to do stuff. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. If they die, then that means that it's not being met. That means there's more issues going on, more instability in families, more instability in this community. It affects every single person. So you guys are actually here to save Hawaii and save this. And if you don't do a good job on it, then it's your fault. Nah, just kidding. But that's kind of what that's almost what we're dealing with. You know what I'm
So
saying?
you guys all should have gone to the religious ceremony and
I
prayed.
know.
No, that's how they split up. They let them do the
I'm
prayer. These
I'm
guys do
sure
the
the chapel
diligence.
is still open.
Well, they're serving lunch. Are we supposed to go for another meeting? One, no, we're not meeting.
I was wondering about that too.
It's just
think
our
this is,
vacant room.
Yeah.
There, it's just for us, yeah, this is, yeah.
But you guys-
It was just to do a follow-up on this, they held a room for us.
Yeah.
We don't need
So
When you
if you
guys-
can
when you
give
guys-
us, if you can send me the names of who's gonna be assigned to our project and their email address,
Yeah, no, we'll
then
coordinate.
we'll start
What do you
getting
guys use? Slack,
information.
Dropbox.
There's gonna be some
I mean,
kind
you
of
can put
outline
it
of
in
what
anything
the
you want.
retreat schedule
Yeah.
is, coming, so.
Got it, but
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I'll give it to them on Wednesday. Monday's a holiday, we're already left.
you're already on.
We left the building.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I'll send Professor Tana my email, and then what we can do is, yeah, definitely contact. And then, like I said, I mean, right now, you guys got information dumped, but you know, so Monday, I expect a solution. No, but that's it, right? I think for the next, when do you guys meet next? Wednesday, perfect. So between now and Wednesday, just reverse information dump. Like, okay, all the crazy stuff you guys heard today, the crazy guy talking up there with the bad PowerPoint. Like, what do I want to know? What do I need to know? It wasn't a PowerPoint. It was like a mind map and a Word document. But you know, like, what do you guys need to know? What information you need, and then we'll go from there. And then, like, exactly to Evan's point, you know, the parameters. Don't feel like we're just gonna throw you out there. You know, it's, again, use that one sheet I gave you, because that's really what it is, and I think that'd be a great opportunity. Essentially, we'll get to the point where we're looking for an advisory board. That's our first step, is to talk to the board chair. Here's some segments we looked at, here's some questions that we can go out and, you know, maybe we don't even go out, but hey, here's some questions that we wanna ask, here's kind of, if we do a survey, here's what the survey might look at. Things like that, simple stuff, so. Cool, thanks, we appreciate it, looking forward to it.
Thank you all.
Excited.
No, she's up front.
Last meeting.
Maybe Side Street gotta cater your retreat.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Right?
Wait, you should get the cutting project. There's this other one. They use,
Side
it's
street,
called
get the
iOgrapher.
retreat.
It's like a piece, you just clip it in, clip it out.
Resources.
So much easier than
So do you work there
Oh
now?
yeah, I
or-
just had
Yeah.
this, so I thought I'd use it. Then I got this thing,
Are there locations that you
Yeah.
shut down right now?
which was just for the iPhone.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
But then,
that one's kind of.
what I normally have is,
So what is different?
I got a 12:1 zoom fisheye camera that was like $1,200, and I thought
So much more hassle